what's up? My name is Matt from the Cinema MD podcast.
And I'm Dana.
And I'm John.
And if you are a regular listener, you may have noticed that we are, holy crap, running behind on episodes right now. And there are a couple reasons for that. Number one, the fact that a horrible, horrible disease, plague, sickness has been running through Dana and I's, extended family like the Black Plague. It's been fucking awful.
It's a spooky season.
Yeah, we were in a lot of commission.
So, that being said, we are currently trying to get caught up on horror movies. So, this will be our second horror movie episode of the month. And we have brought John back as our guest host, and this is going to be our first three-way podcast episode.
Oh yeah.
Menage a trois in more ways than one.
Not in more ways than one. It's in exactly one way.
Well, there's also 3 movies.
2 ways.
Okay.
2 ways exactly.
Yeah.
So, I guess we don't need to really bullshit too much here. Let's just jump right into it. The first movie we're going to talk about is a super classic Italian giallo horror film. And probably the most famous of the Italian horror films of the era. That's Dario Argento's Suspiria. So, if you are unfamiliar with Suspiria, we'll probably delve into some spoilers here. That being said, I don't think it really matters with this movie because seeing the movie and experiencing it, and if you can manage to find it like playing in an art house theater somewhere, I highly recommend that as well because the soundtrack is a big part of the experience. The colors, the visuals, seeing it on a big screen with a big booming soundtrack is the ideal way to see this movie. And spoilers be damned, I think you'll enjoy it regardless if you can see it in that setting.
Suspiria is kind of crazy because it's like an impressionist picture set to a motion film. Like, it's so much light and sound. The characters moving around are just elements of the larger thing. So, yeah, there's a story, and yeah, there's gore, and yeah, it's spooky, and there's all kinds of cool stuff. But it's quite an experience, and like Matt said, it's definitely one of those things you just want to be there and have it blast directly in your face.
Very true. We were able to see it this year. We've obviously all seen this movie many times, but we were able to go see it at a theater myself for the first time. This is personally one of my favorite kind of cult classic horror movies. But yeah, it was definitely an experience seeing it on the big screen. The soundtrack alone is killer if you're into, kind of synthesizer, spooky, ambient type of music. It's great on its own.
Soundtrack is by the band Goblin, by the way, which is just a great name for a band. And yeah, it's basically like synth metal, I guess would be a way to put it. And it's just super creepy. We did manage to see the new 4K restoration that was just released in theaters again, and it was definitely awesome. The movie looked incredible compared to the like DVD, scans that I've seen of it before. So, if you can find one of the 4K restorations playing anywhere near you, I would see them. The restoration was actually done by Synapse Films, too, if you're a local Michigan listener, which a lot of our listeners are, and we're based near Detroit. Synapse Films is located in the Metro Detroit area, and they did the restoration with, their 2-man staff working directly with the original cinematographer of Suspiria. So, shout out to them, because they kind of knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, it was really cool. That's what I was going to say is that, it was restored here in Michigan, so that was really cool to kind of know that little extra info. And yeah, it looked really good on the screen. I mean, obviously you can tell it's from the 70s, but picture-wise, the quality was, as good as it could possibly be.
So we should probably talk about what Suspiria actually is, though, right?
Yes. If anyone's seen this, obviously you know that the plot is secondary to the atmosphere. That being said, the bare outline of the movie basically follows an American, young woman who is entering a dance academy in, is it like a German dance academy or something she's going to?
Yeah, I think so. Germany.
Berlin, yeah.
Like Berlin, yeah.
Maybe.
So she's,
Yeah.
I think she's in like Germany. So she's basically going to this prestigious dance academy, and right from the beginning, things seem a little off. There's like when she arrives, like nobody will let her in, and there's, you know, a woman running away, like crying in the distance in the woods, and the soundtrack is very ominous, and it's pouring rain, and it's creepy as fuck, and you just know that something is going to be going on in this dance academy, which of course turns out to be the case.
It's not immediately clear what exactly is happening though, because you see the character like very slowly walking through the airport, and it keeps cutting away and flashing and looking at the dark expanse of the door as if she's walking into a world of darkness, and she has to hail down a cab in the rain-slicked streets and is carried through this dark forest almost as if she's going to another world. When she finally reaches the academy that she's going to, like, it's a huge, almost Gothic-style building made of, like, pink stone. And as Matt said, she's banging at the door, screaming to be let in, and people are yelling at her to go away. They don't know who she is. She's not welcome, as if to yell out, "Save yourself, get away from here." It's not good. And it sets the stage really well, and then immediately cuts to total, like, almost complete silence inside the academy. And we see the kind of things that are happening, the undercurrent of menace that is befalling all this strange and otherworldly scenario that the character is immersing herself in.
So that leads into the first kill, which is a very memorable one. And the kills in this movie are they're somewhat gory. The blood is very it's very colorful, it's very vibrant, and everything is very meticulously staged and orchestrated to be as visually effective as possible.
Yeah, bright red seems to be a recurring theme, both in the scenery, not as much, I would say, in, like, characters' clothing, things like that, but it's like they're surrounded by color. Really vivid red is probably the number one. There's also a lot of blue tones with the lighting, and any of the blood that's shown, I would say, and this kind of hails back to movies of the time also, instead of that sort of darker purpley color that is more realistic looking, it's like purposefully this bright, like, garish red.
It's kind of interesting too, because a lot of the things that Hitchcock did with Psycho, where it's a very deliberate choice of black and white for the contrast and the color or lack thereof, is almost the exact opposite in this movie, where everything is massively, it stands out. It like they said, the blood is this vibrant color that's completely outside the realm of what you would normally expect to see. There's stained glass windows that are just explosions of light. Everywhere has got some kind of a gel filter over it, so some corridors will be like completely green, some others will have like this brilliant red light. It's quite a remarkable sight to see.
And in terms of the villain of the movie or villains of the movie, it's not like a slasher movie in a traditional sense where there's this guy running around with a knife. You find out pretty early on, and if you listen to the actual soundtrack early on, they give away, the most basic element of what the villain is in this movie. And it at its core, it's a movie about witches. And I think it's probably, we had this discussion after I saw the movie. I can't really think of more than a couple other movies about witches specifically that can compete with this. This is like the quintessential, up there with the movie that came out last year, The Witch. Probably like the two best movies like that are flat out about witches.
Are you bad-mouthing Hocus Pocus?
Best horror movies about witches.
Okay. What about Season of the Witch?
Halloween 3?
Yeah, sure.
Halloween 3 might be called Season of the Witch.
It's more about druids, but I mean, it's still a witchcraft pagan kind of thing, right?
I guess, but I mean,
Loosely.
like, listen, I I guess I'm talking like a wicked witch or a coven of witches, like the more the evil cackling witch. Like I'm thinking the traditional witch. I think that Suspiria and the witch. Those are my two. Like I don't think anything competes with those two.
Okay. I mean, I agree with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I wanted to know if you have any opinions on
Did
things
you know
like
that witches
the right.
are like they're like devil's advocates?
Oh,
boy. Oh, boy.
This guy. Oh, man. This is the hard-hitting investigative journalism you've come to expect from Cinema MD. Yeah.
So you're not going to include, some Sandra Bullock, Nicole Kidman practical magic in your witch movies?
Oh.
I believe I specified horror films.
Listen, there was some spooky, parts in there when they brought the dead guy back, but I'm gonna guess you're not a, late '90s halfway chick flick connoisseur.
That entirely depends on what chick flicks you're talking about. But no, Practical Magic was not one of my go-to chick flicks of the '90s.
No, it's not mine either. I just felt it was funny because it's about witches, but not in the same way.
I'll give an honorable... Excuse me, I'm dying here. I'll give an honorable mention to The Witches, the adaptation of the Roald Dahl novel.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Angelica Houston as a psycho evil witch. That's a really good one, too, because they pretty much ate children in that movie.
The right was kind of an interesting one, though obviously the other side of it, where it's, witches are nice and kind and respect nature and all that, except for the ones who crave power, and then it all falls apart. Oh, no. I was thinking, though, do you think Death Becomes Her is technically about witchcraft? Because it is like a magic thing.
Ooh, that's a good one, too.
I have not seen that movie in 20 years. And I was so young when I saw it that I probably need to see it again.
First of all, it's very funny. Secondly, I got really excited for a second because I thought we had found a movie that you're going to say, oh, I actually haven't seen that one. You're going to pull a Dana and have not seen a common movie.
Oh, no.
Listen, there are movies out there that I haven't seen. It's a thing.
There's like 3.
Right, well, we'll come across them one day.
So, back to Suspiria, though.
Yes.
Again, I don't really know what more can really be said. Dario Argento is kind of a legend among horror movie fans. The more casual horror movie or movie watcher might not know who he is, or maybe is not entirely familiar with him. He's done plenty of shitty movies. And Suspiria is definitely his best and what he's most known for. But he's got a handful of really good movies out there that you can check out, like Suspiria, Inferno, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Deep Red. Those are probably some of the like best known ones. But he's laid some goose eggs too. Most of the Italian horror movie guys, their movies are bizarre and over the top, and a lot of them. There's more misses than hits. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. If I liked Suspiria. It's a really great movie. If I had one complaint, it's not really a complaint. It's more of a weird observation. It's that there's a grave inconsistency between the volume level of the music and the volume level of the dialogue.
That was very apparent seeing it live. Live, like in a movie theater. The minute the actual score started, I almost covered my ears. It was painfully loud. And I see like the effect of that they were going for. And obviously if you're viewing it at home, you can control that yourself a little bit more easily. But yes, that it almost detracted from it just a tiny bit.
Yeah, it's like a wall of sound. It really is, and it's understandable because as soon as the music kicks in, that's when the action is happening. So it doesn't overpower dialogue or anything meaningful. Like people might be yelling out, "Where are you?" But it's throwaway lines. It's to sort of put you in the position of the characters themselves. They're being overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their control, and that's basically what the music is doing to the viewer.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of on the other end of things in the theater. I thought that the music was appropriately loud, and it was oppressive, and I thought it needed to be oppressive, and it had a really strong effect to me. I thought it was the best way that I've ever experienced that movie. I always enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I loved seeing it in a theater with the sound booming. That being said, since we had brought up the dialogue in this movie is probably the weakest element in the film.
It's a little confusing at certain points, and there's a reason for that.
So, a fun tidbit. This movie was originally written to be based in a dance school for children that are like 12 years old and under. And the producer basically told Dario Argento, fuck you, no, this movie's way too violent. We're not killing kids like that in a movie. So they made it more of a like college age dance academy, but they never changed the dialogue. So you've got a bunch of really goofy, like little kid bantering, bickering dialogue going on that really does seem a little out of place.
Also, fun fact, if your name starts with an S, it's the name of a snake.
Yeah, that's an actual line in the movie.
Yeah. This is what real adults say to one another. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little lost on that one myself.
So, long story short, Suspiria is a classic. It's an excellent movie. It'll be coming out on Blu-ray with the 4K restoration here pretty shortly, probably by the end of the calendar year 2017. So if you can find it, I would get it. If you can't, pick it up on DVD online or something like that. You can probably get it for like $10. It's worth it. It's a great movie. Just don't expect to be wowed by the narrative. Go into it knowing that you're getting into something that's more atmospheric and, audio visual as opposed to storytelling.
So Matt, how would you rank this movie?
Well, to me, it does everything that it wants to do so well. I'm not really going to knock it for its dialogue because it's basically so unimportant to the actual experience of the film. So to me, it's a 9 out of 10.
Okay, how about you there, Dana?
I was gonna say, how many curly pugtails would you give this film? So you're going with 9.
9 curly pugtails, yes.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm trying out different rating systems here. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely more of an experience than something that you're watching for its great, dialogue, storyline, plot. It's not that there's a lot of twists or surprises. It's mysterious, but it's not, this sort of incredible piece of fiction. So, yeah, I agree, though, that it does what it's aiming to do in the visual and audio aspects of it. So, I'd say for comparing it to other older horror movies, yeah, I'll go with 9. I'll agree with you on that one.
Personally, from a scale of Ba Ram You to Live Deliciously, I would give this a solid Black Phillip.
Nice.
I like it.
All right.
Okay, so moving on from witchcraft to something that is sort of in the same ballpark, we're getting into sort of like black magic rituals here. This is a movie that is available on Netflix right now. Dana and I saw it in 2016 at Fantastic Fest last year, and it just showed up on Netflix. It's a great movie. It's called A Dark Song. It's directed by Liam Gavin, who I don't really think has done anything else. This is like his first big movie. I say big. It's still a pretty like low budget independent film, but it seems like it does a lot more with its budget than it deserves. Probably has any right to. The stars of the movie are Catherine Walker and Steve Oram. Steve Oram you might recognize if you've seen Sightseers by Ben Wheatley, kind of a dark comedy that was on Netflix for a while. And if you can seek out Sightseers, do it, because it's a really, really funny, fucked up movie. That being said, A Dark Song. John, why don't you summarize A Dark Song?
Oh boy. Okay, so basically we're given a female protagonist, and she has to contact a acquaintance, at least, a ginger man who has some experience with these kind of things. And it's not entirely clear why she wants to contact this person for, apparently, the use of the dark arts. And she provides a reason, which she quickly goes back on, and she provides another reason. And eventually, she provides a reason that this master of the dark arts, who honestly looks like he's a football fan that would go to a soccer game. Like he looks very unassuming to be some kind of dark wizard that is utilizing ancient texts of forgotten lore. But eventually, the two of them decide to get together and start working on this ritual to contact this woman's guardian angel. And apparently, if they do the ritual correctly, each of them gets to make a request of the guardian angel, and they have to conduct this ritual that, oh boy, they're not sure how long it's going to take. And as it turns out, this one ritual that they conduct, then they lock themselves in a house and can't go anywhere for, 6 months?
Yeah, that's sort of the crux of the whole thing. Is he kind of warns her, if you're ready to do this, you have to commit, because once you start the ritual, you can't get out of it and you can't stop. And it's going to take about 6 months. So it's like a huge time commitment and this very slow burn process of summoning, whatever with this ritual.
And they use the term guardian angel, but they make it very clear that it's a very thin line, the difference between summoning the forces of good and evil, and you're using basically the same type of magic either way. So one little fuck up here or there, and you could be dealing with some very dark and evil shit.
I gotta tell you, one of my favorite parts about this movie is the detail that they go to in detail and talking about the ritual that they're going to be conducting. It's not, a lot of movies like this would just gloss it over like, oh, I've got the Necronomicon, I'm gonna read some lines and some stuff happens. Don't get me wrong, that I'm not hating on Evil Dead. Evil Dead's great, but the point of this movie is the ritual, so I really appreciate that they went into so much detail with what the ritual involves, the various diagrams they have to draw, the rites they have to enact, and they show the physical toll that it's taking on the characters. Like, you see a character can't leave one space for like 48 hours, and like she ends up pissing herself because you can't leave that space. And it gets pretty like intense. Like, there's points where characters just collapse and are vomiting and having difficulty dealing with it, and tensions run high, as you would expect from stuff like that. So it's a very human look at the kind of things that would go into something like this.
Yeah, this was the last movie we saw on the first day of Fantastic Fest. So it was movie number 5, starting at, 11 p.m.? So we'd already been seeing movies all day long. This one it's a slow burn for sure. You are sitting there, it's interesting, you're paying attention to the ritual, and it is very tense. There is a huge toll, so you're kind of waiting for something to happen. And it's definitely was worth a rewatch, because we were both pretty exhausted when we originally saw this film in the theater. But it really is fantastic overall once you kind of get through and kind of maybe go into it knowing that it's going to be a slower film. And then it does get a little more action-packed towards the end as it, culminates in the ritual. But, I thought this was great, and it's a little bit different than maybe your suspenseful slasher or something like that.
The one thing about it is you're constantly basically doing the same thing the character is doing, in that you're always looking for, like, is anything happening? Is anything changing? You're the protagonist that has hired this kind of doofy guy to perform this ritual, or to help her perform this ritual. She's constantly badgering him, like, when is something going to happen? How are we supposed to know that this is doing anything? It's been months and not a single thing has happened. And that's how you're feeling watching the movie as well. I mean, obviously, you're also engrossed by the relationship between these characters and kind of the development of what's going on with them, and the tension and the hardships that they're going through. But in the end, it's almost like a Paranormal Activity kind of thing, where you're like watching the screen, like listening, like, are you gonna hear some weird thing or see some weird thing that isn't supposed to happen? Like, is there a cue that's telling you that this ritual is actually going to work out? Because you really don't know for the longest time.
There's a really strong sense of unreliable narrator going on there, because right at the beginning he tells her, I've done this 3 times before, once successfully, 2 unsuccessfully, but both of the unsuccessful ones were the fault of the person doing the woman doing the ritual there. So like right off the bat, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And whenever he points out something that's intended to be a sign that it's working, it's just like little flower petals on the ground, or like a bird hitting a window, or like the wind shifts slightly, or you hear a howling dog. It's like, these are absolutely ordinary things. How could they possibly indicate that some kind of ritual is actually working? And that's how our main character feels, and that's kind of how the viewers feel also. So it's really a question of, whoa, is this guy just putting her on? Is there a reason why he's subjecting her to such torments?
And they really are torments. And there's also there is that part where you're wondering, holy shit, is this guy just like really sadistic? Like, is he just fucking with her this entire time because it like gets him off? And you're wondering the entire time, really, until the final act, where everything kind of comes together, the tension reaches its climax, and regardless of whether, I'm not going to spoil what happens with the ritual, but whether the ritual goes off successfully or fails miserably, there is a lot of shit that goes down at the end of this movie in the last like 15-20 minutes.
It's kind of interesting too. Is this technically an indie movie? Is this a private thing, or is this a studio production?
No, this is an independent film.
Okay.
They were actually still looking for distribution when we saw it at Fantastic Fest.
Ah, okay. I was going to say, because a lot of the effects that they use aren't over the top, like big budget effects, but what they use very effectively. Like it's small art house kind of things, but it's subtle. It's not in your face CGI all over the place, just blasting off and buildings exploding and giant blue beams of light lancing out into the sky.
You mean it's not a Michael Bay horror movie?
No, Michael Bay horror movie, man, what would that be like?
Fucking horrible.
So Michael Bay has produced a number of horror movies under the Platinum Dunes blanket.
Oh, no.
So Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake.
Oh boy.
Friday the 13th.
He Michael Bay that up a little bit.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake.
The remake, yeah.
Yeah. Courtesy of producer Michael Bay.
Are you telling me Michael Bay doesn't have the high quality thinkers that can come up with original scripts?
I'm telling you that Michael Bay can make a pretty looking thing that is a hollow, empty shell on the inside.
Yeah,
Ooh,
okay.
shiny.
Yeah, he's the devil in the white city kind of stuff going on there, huh? It's all plaster Paris.
Building off of the remake versus original story, that's always going to get a high vote for me, and that definitely is what is happening in this film. Is it's a very original story. It's not a remake of anything. It's not playing off of anything else. It's a really creative, really its own story. And due to the level of detail on this whole black magic ritual, either way, if maybe they did some research into different rituals and use those as reference, or if this just purely came out of the mind of some of the writers, either way, it's a totally original thing, which I always really appreciate.
Yeah, I think that if you go into this and you can adjust to the way of speaking, because it's very thick British Isles accents for everybody, but you eventually get the patter down. If you go into it expecting to be wowed visually, you might be a little disappointed. But if you go in looking for a story and you're looking for sort of this tension and the drama that comes from not exactly horrific, but certainly like spooky, scary, tense plots, then I do not think you will be disappointed.
And I think it almost does the opposite of what Suspiria does. Obviously, it's both intentional. So Suspiria has a very vivid, visual palette that you're dealing with. This one is very drab. It's, the English countryside, sort of monochromatic. It's rainy, it's gray, they're in an old house. But I think that's also effective in building that sense of, is this working? Is something going to happen? Is this just, a huge failure in terms of what the characters are trying to do?
So, we all like this movie. What are we scoring this one?
All right, I'll jump back in. I would say I did really enjoy the originality of it and the story. It is like I say, a little bit slow at points. If you can, know that going in, I think you'll be okay. But I would say I'd give it an 8.5.
Okay. Matt?
Oh, this is a tough one for me. I really liked it, but I do think that it's one that the entertainment value definitely suffers just based on the story itself, and you have to be in the right mindset to watch this movie. You cannot. This is not a movie you can just pop on and enjoy, and that's not really to take away from it. You can't pop on Saving Private Ryan every day and just love it, but it's still a great movie. So I guess knowing that and knowing that you need to be in the right mood and mindset to watch this and enjoy it, I think I would give this one a 9 as well. I mean, it's for what it is, it's the only movie of its kind that I can think of. So it's the best example of a movie of its kind. I mean, it's really good.
I agree with everything you're saying there. If you're not willing to devote the attention to it, then you're not going to get very much out of it. But if you sit down and you are really invested in it, I think you're really going to enjoy this movie. So on an angelic scale from Lucifer to Gabriel, I would give this an Uriel. Maybe an Azazel. No, we'll stick with Uriel.
I don't even know what that means, but I like it.
All right.
So normally we'd only do 2 movies, but because we're playing catch up, we're going to throw an additional movie in there. And this one is also available on Netflix right now. And this is definitely more of a popcorn movie. And I don't know, I thought it was a pretty fun movie to watch. The movie is The Babysitter. And it is directed by legendary music video / Mission Impossible. Wait, not Mission Impossible 2. Charlie's Angels. Yeah, that's right.
High quality.
I believe he directed Charlie's Angels, maybe Charlie's Angels 2, maybe both. I don't even know. The director is Mick G. Yes, he's very... If you were a 90s and early 2000s music video fan, if you were a TRL regular, if you will, then you know the name Mick G down in the corner of the music videos.
Is that G the letter or G-E-E?
No, literally just Mick, like M, uppercase M, lowercase c, and then the letter G.
Oh, dang, that's pretty fancy.
Mick G. It's like McLovin, but fucking worse.
Well, everything's worse than McLovin, so...
So, who would like to summarize The Babysitter? This is not high art here. This is definitely more of a... Now, if we're talking about on a scale of a dark song to a fucking... What's a horror movie that you can just pop on at any moment and enjoy it? I don't even know. This is definitely a horror movie that I feel like could be watched over and over again, and it's just goofy fun. So this is as vastly different from Suspiria and A Dark Song as humanly possible.
Yeah, definitely the other end of the spectrum. I always get nervous doing summaries that I'm going to be spoilery. I never know what's an appropriate level of spoil.
Yeah, I would say we're going to try to avoid some spoilers here just because...
Literally just came out.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen the trailer, which you can see on Netflix or YouTube or wherever the hell you see trailers, they definitely give some stuff away about the basic plot elements, so we can delve into that. But I'm definitely going to try to avoid at least giving away endings and kills and things like that, because that's the fun of the movie. Oh, yeah. And it is a new release on Netflix, so most people probably haven't seen it yet. But if you're looking for something to put on your Halloween watch list for the rest of the month, this is a great one. It's a fun movie. I guess I'll summarize as best I can here. So The Babysitter, the title character is B. I don't think we're given her actual full name. She's B. And played by Samara Weaving, who's this super hot blonde babysitter. I guess she's supposed to be a high school senior from what I can gather, although all of the characters in this movie that are supposed to be high school seniors look like they're about 30, and that might be 100% intentional. Honestly, it's kind of going for a very tongue-in-cheek movie kind of anyways, so I think that might be part of the point. The high school, the seniors look way older than they're supposed to be. Our main character is Cole, and he is apparently supposed to be 12, I believe. So he's like a middle schooler kind of thing going on.
I mean, he looks it.
Right. So he gets bullied. He's a super nerd.
He's afraid of everything.
Yes. So he's scared of everything. Like his dad's trying to kind of like give him some lessons on driving the car. His dad's played by Ken Marino, by the way, who plays Victor in Wet Hot American Summer. Great. I love this guy. He's hilarious. He's great as the dad. He doesn't have a huge role in this movie, but I really enjoy him. And Leslie Bibb plays his mom, who, again, for her limited screen time, does a good job as well. They're kind of the two bigger names in the movie, I would say, I guess. And Cole is this bullied little nerd kid, and B is his babysitter. And, of course, he's like the only kid his age that still has a babysitter, but as he puts it, nobody cares because once they see her, they just get jealous because she's super fucking hot, which is admittedly true.
Accurate, very accurate.
And they have a really cool relationship. Like, they kind of geek out together. B seems like a super cool babysitter. She nerds out and quotes movies with him and lets him do whatever he wants and whatever. And they both seem like pretty cool characters, in general. But as you can kind of glean from the title of the movie, and if you've seen any sort of trailer to this movie, the babysitter may not be exactly what you think she is. In this case, the babysitter invites a bunch of her friends over, and let's just say shit gets dark.
Yeah, it's after, Cole is supposed to be put to bed for the night. And of course he decides to rebel for the first time and stay up and peek down and see what they're doing. And of course what he witnesses is, the crux of the movie there.
Well, he thinks that he's going to witness an orgy, which he has to Google.
He has to say he Googled orgy.
Yeah. He, man, he is such a nerd. It's great. I love it.
But, of course, what you essentially witness, you're not exactly sure what's going on. And without spoiling too much, basically you witness this babysitter and all of her, like, high school stereotype friends that show up. You've got, like, the hot cheerleader, the jock, the black guy. Literally, I don't have another way to put this. He's literally the token black guy. You've got, like, the quirky goth Asian girl. And then you've got, like, their nerd friend who's there with them.
You forgot the best character in the entire movie, the quarterback.
That's the jock guy.
Oh, yeah, okay. You called him jock. I just immediately quarterback because they make a reference to that later on.
Right. The quarterback, by the way, played by Robbie ML. And if you're a fan of the show The Arrow on CW, I guess it's not The Arrow, it's just Arrow. Anyways, he's Stephen Amell's brother, and he also plays, I don't know, he's in the show. He's in Legends of Tomorrow too. He plays the guy that Firestorm or whatever that flies around. Yeah, anyways, he's if you're a fan of superhero shows, he's on those superhero shows. Bella Thorne plays the cheerleader. She's, I don't really know what the hell she does. I just know she's all over gossip magazine, social media things, whatever. People know who she is. I have no idea who she is. Apparently I'm 30 and I'm too old to know who she is.
Tell me you aren't addicted to the CW?
Listen, I love the CW. The Flash is like one of my favorite shows.
Okay.
But I don't know who the hell Bella Thorne is. Please, somebody email us, comment. Tell me why I should know who Bella Thorne is other than the fact that she's, really hot. I don't know. That's all I got.
Matt would look it up, but his Google is occupied by looking up orgy, so.
It's just videos. It's not, shut up.
Fair enough. So one of the things, as you may have noticed as Matt listed off the tropes there, all of these characters that get invited by the babysitter are tropes of characters that would normally get killed off in any kind of slasher movie. If you have seen Cabin in the Woods, you have the nerd, you have the jock, you have the slut, you have the bookworm. all these kind of things.
Oh yeah, the black guy falls into the stoner category in this one too, so he even fills that role.
There you go. There you go. But those aren't our protagonists. Our protagonist is this little kid who's a big fan of movies and nerd culture and all that kind of thing. So it's an interesting little inversion that the typical, Scooby and the gang dynamic are not the people we're following around. We're following around this person who is a little more savvy to the ins and outs of these kind of genres.
Yeah, it's instead of the babysitter and her friends getting attacked from the outside, we've got the babysitter basically being the bad guy, and she's already in the house. So that's kind of where the entire plot of this movie really begins.
And it is very, tongue-in-cheek. It's a fun movie in that there's a lot of very specific kind of goofy camera angles or scene wipes or zoom-ins on certain things. There's a little bit of, not quite breaking the fourth wall, but, every once in a while a scene will freeze and, like a subtitle or a goofy lettering appears at the bottom of the screen. So it definitely gives it a more lighthearted feel, despite, the events that are going on.
Yeah, the little text popping up really remind me of like Zombieland, where they take the time to pause and give you a very clear explanation. Yeah, this is what's going on now. Badass.
Oh, but the best use of text on screen to label characters. Now, in this movie, it's just names. But the movie Feast is by far the best example of this. If you haven't seen the movie Feast, I can't really recommend it too highly, but it's a really funny kind of monster horror movie. And they literally have like full character bios that pop up whenever a new character is introduced. And it includes their life expectancy in the movie, which is just a great touch.
Yeah, Feast is a little more gore-fest than this one. This one has some interesting kills, don't get me wrong, but it's not buckets of blood kind of style. This is really more in the style of, as I mentioned, Cabin in the Woods, but also Tucker and Dale versus Evil. It's very much that great synthesis of the classic horror tropes modified with a comedic angle, and that's really what this is. It's a comedy. It's still appropriate for Halloween because it's got the broad strokes of a typical slasher kind of thing, but man, oh man, it is quite comedic. I enjoyed it a great deal.
I will say, there's some lapses in logic in this movie in a few instances that bugged me, and I don't really think it's a big deal, and I don't want to get into it because there's, maybe some scenes that I would prefer not to spoil for people, but there's definitely some weird lapses in logic where like things probably shouldn't have happened the way they did, but it's kind of expected in a movie like this.
Well, that's almost a horror movie trope in and of itself is, you always have the girls who are running up the stairs when they should be running out the front door, things like that. So I'm not exactly sure which lapses in judgment you're talking about.
I'm talking about the police.
Oh, sure. Yep, okay. So, yes.
Oh my god, the police in this town are so terrible. It's like the worst police force.
Right. So I could see that being very not realistic, but you can kind of forgive it because it's a horror movie, it's a comedy, it's not really supposed to be realistic. And yes, maybe that was supposed to be its own device of this is never going to happen, so we're going to throw it in.
Listen, all I'm saying is 2 white cops walked into a house and there were bloody people standing there, one of whom straight up just murders a cop. I'm spoiler, sorry. One of them straight up murders a cop. The other cop, first of all, doesn't even shoot the black guy. Which, how is that realistic?
Oh, boy.
Like, first of all, he would have been shot before a cop was killed, but they killed a cop and then they still didn't shoot him. And then, not only that, he doesn't shoot anybody. He doesn't do anything.
Cops in these movies are always the worst. They're always completely incapable. This isn't the best example of it. It's just one that I saw recently, but Goosebumps. Like, the cops in that town are a complete joke.
I know, but Goosebumps is like a kid's movie. This is, I don't know. Listen, this was a comedy. I get it. I think even in a movie like this that is basically slapstick, I think there's room for intelligent characters, and hey, if you really wanted to, they had a really good opportunity for just a little slice of social commentary they could have thrown in there, and they completely shit the bed on it.
Yeah. I feel like if you want a smart cop that's going to be doing their job and doing it well, watch Stranger Things, because that cop is great. If you want any other version of a cop doing anything in a horror movie, you're not going to find it. Like Halloween, what's he do? He doubts the guy and goes around and completely fails to protect everybody?
Yeah, I mean, law enforcement in horror movies generally fails. It usually is up to the, the boy or girl who cried wolf to the cops that ends up being the one that actually knows what's going on and has to save the day.
Well, I mean, so you can't really brag on this one for doing exactly what every other film does. I mean, at least he calls 911 right off the bat. Every other time you see something like this, the character's like, oh no, what am I going to do? I got to escape. Like, just call the damn cops. He does that right off the bat, instantaneously.
I'm just saying, the only character that had a gun was the cop that was still alive. You just saw your partner standing 3 feet away from you get killed by the people that you're pointing a gun at, and you don't do anything. Like, I thought the cop should have maybe like taken somebody out before, he got his. I guess would have been, or tried to maybe at least.
Someone did get shot in that scene?
But it was by accident by the cop that was already dead, so that doesn't count.
All right. Maybe they were just trying to envision a world where cops don't shoot people, warranted or unwarranted. So obviously not the world we live in. Maybe it was part of the fantasy for them.
I think you're missing the point of the thing.
Yep.
It's a comedy.
My fault.
Anyway, small little quibbles aside, it is quite an enjoyable film, and I believe that most people who see this will sit down and get a lot of yucks and a lot of oh my gosh and a lot of what the fucks and enjoy the whole experience.
A lot of good one-liners, a lot of cool funny characters. I really like the ending of the movie too. I thought that the way, and I'll use their terminology, the way they deal with the big bad was well done. I thought it was cathartic. I thought everything came full circle. There was character development. There was an arc. Yeah.
Same.
At the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. Honestly, I was kind of hoping that there would not be an arc because you really like the babysitter and you like the characters and you want everyone to get along. And it's like, why can't they just get along? I understand that some of them are murderers, but like, just move past it. Just ignore that bit. They're all cool people. Hang out. Be friends.
Now I know that if I ever have some horrible character flaw that reveals itself to John, he can hopefully just look past it.
Yeah, you just move on.
Also, this babysitter is like the best at cleaning up after herself.
Yeah,
that's all I'm going to say about that.
Oh boy. Yeah, pretty much.
So, The Babysitter, on a scale of 1 to 10, because I don't have a creative bone in my body apparently, I'm going to give The Babysitter a solid 7 out of 10. I thought it was a really good movie, but, as John said, it is basically in the same vein as something like Tucker versus Dale. Or Tucker versus Dale. Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Tucker versus Dale would be like the great sequel.
Oh, no.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil, to me, is like the quintessential horror comedy, like modern horror comedy. I love that movie, and this didn't make me laugh nearly as much as that did. The kills are on par, I would say, or close to it, but Tucker and Dale's way funnier. So if I'm giving Tucker and Dale, let's say that's my 10 of horror comedies, this didn't get there for me. This is a 7. It's a good movie. It's enjoyable. Watch it. Especially since it's on Netflix. I can always give recommendations for Netflix movies easier than I can recommend going to the theater. So, you don't really have to spend your hard-earned money on it. It's part of your Netflix subscription. Give it a watch this Halloween.
Yeah, I think I can see where you're going there. would maybe give it a little bit higher than a 7, only because sometimes I'm just not in the mood for the super serious, kind of super torture horror movie or slasher or very kind of heavy movie. I like the horror comedy as kind of a good, compromise to, I want to watch something gross, but still not let it affect me so hard. I'm more of the emotional movie person than you are. But we'll say a 7 3/4.
Okay, just ever so slightly better. Just
yeah, just a little bit.
You're doing the inverse. Price is right there. Just
yes.
$1 more. Okay. I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. I had the only small quibble was they can't because it's a movie quibble. So I'm giving this a much better ranking here. I would say on a scale from slashing a teen across the throat to let's say putting a teen in a sleeping bag and then banging them back and forth between 2 trees. I would give this like a pretty good power drill right through the head.
It's a throwback to one of our previous reviews, by the way.
Indeed.
City of the Living Dead. Drill through the head. Good kill.
Be the coolest kid on your block. Buy a copy today.
So, man, we reviewed 3 movies that we liked today. Like we all the low score was a 7 for horror movies. What the fuck is going on here? There's a lot of shitty horror movies out there.
The spirit of Halloween.
Listen, I'm just saying, like, I knew Suspiria was good and I knew A Dark Song was good because of Fantastic Fest. I mean, I went into The Babysitter blind. That movie could have sucked. I saw Mick G's name attached to it and I was like, it's gonna fucking blow. I knew it was pretty good, so I'd say this is a good news day. We just gave you 3 good horror movies to seek out and watch for Halloween. So we'll be back with more next week. Dana and I have a non-horror episode coming up shortly here that we're gonna hopefully have released within a day or 2 of this one. So if you're listening, be on the lookout for that as well, and then we'll hopefully be back on schedule for the rest of the week. That being said, check us out on iTunes, Cinema MD Podcast. You can just search for it, whatever you want to do. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all that fun stuff. If you check us out on iTunes, please leave a review, 5 stars, 4 stars, 1 star, I don't care, whatever you think is appropriate. If you like it, leave a nice review. That helps us get searched, helps us get more listeners we have. The more interaction we can have with you guys, the more interaction we have, the more suggestions we get, the cooler we can make it for everybody involved. Check us out on social media too. All that fun stuff. We like to kind of communicate with everybody if possible. So the more listeners we have, the more we get to do that. And hey, we love it. So that's it for this episode. So, again, I'm Matt and,
there's also Dana and John. Hey.
Yeah, hey. Hi, bye.
Yeah.
We're working on that. So we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.